My time living in another dimension for a few months wasn't great. When you're controlled by a magical dog collar, which is fastened tightly around your neck, making it difficult to breathe, it's hard to have a good time. Add to that the fact that I was being imprisoned behind a pane of glass like a parakeet at a pet store, and you can start to picture what I was going through. The toughest part about being held captive was the lack of freedom. The second hardest part was the heat. It's really hot living in a glass box with no shade protection. I think that was the idea, since they were collecting our sweat in a trough all day, which local goats lapped at enthusiastically. I was sweating heavily, and a metal straw was hanging down from above, which fed me warm, gritty water when I needed it. Like a hamster. The woman who owned me came by the box every once in a while and looked in at me, making sure I was doing the mindless tasks they assigned with sufficient speed and accuracy. The material I was taught to work with bent readily at the high temperatures in the greenhouse-style box, and I figured that's why it was being used as my prison. The electrolyte content of our sweat also seemed to satisfy the inherent sodium needs of the village's goat population. Dozens of other captive workers were lined up and down the street as well, and I saw they were imprisoned just like me in sweltering glass boxes. All of us were pouring sweat and working hard at all times, the collars around our necks tightening to choke us when we proved disobedient. "Work faster," the young woman who owned me said, after rapping on the glass with her knuckles. "We have a deadline." Then she proceeded to stomp away, a small crowd of goats following in her wake. I raised my head up to get a drink of water, and squinted my eyes against the bright light. But suddenly the light wasn't bright anymore. It was obstructed by a shadow. "Bruca?" I croaked through dry, flaking lips. "Is it really you?" I was surprised to see sympathy in her eyes. Something I hadn't thought she was capable of. But maybe the dark sorceress girl I'd once loved wasn't as evil as I'd been forced to believe. "You look terrible," she said, staring at me from inside the glass box. "No wonder. It's hot as hell in here. Literally. Hell is about this temperature. I've been there. This is maybe even a little worse." "Please tell me you came to save me. I can't take this anymore." Her eyes hardened, and her violet irises glowed like fluorescence. "Did you rethink our proposal? Do you agree to join the Dark One in his plans? Will you participate in the great unmaking?" I stood there, looking carefully at her. If I said no, she might leave me there. But if I said yes, I could lose my soul. I could be turned to the dark side. I might lose my humanity and everything that makes me, me. I've had a lot of time to think here. "Yes? And I can't agree to turn the whole multiverse into darkness and abyss. It's just too evil." She sighed. "I had a feeling you might say that." She blinked out of existence, leaving me in the boiling hot glass cube once again. I looked up and down the street and saw nobody had really noticed what had happened. They were all going about their duties as if the whole thing had just been a fever dream. Except for one thing. A gnarled wooden wand which sat on the floor of the glass box. It looked a bit familiar, like the one Derek the Dark Apprentice had wielded. She left me a way out, I thought, trying to hide my grin. Careful now. Don't blow this. I bent over and picked up the ancient-looking wand, made from a piece of the all-world tree. The power of it could be felt running through me a second later, and my heart began to beat faster as I thought about escaping. All this time, I'd been cut off from the magic I'd learned. I'd been incapable of using it without a piece of the tree to channel the other dimensions through. But I'd spent my time wisely. I'd spent it trying to think of creative ways to use the magic of the tree, without using the spells which Xavier had given away to his other 6 apprentices. Sorcerers and sorceresses could only teach a spell by giving that power away. Thus, by taking on so many apprentices, Xavier had made my job 6 times more difficult. I had to defeat each one of them, including Grupe, his daughter, to gain full access to the powers of the All-World Tree, and in order to become the new guardian of our world. First thing was first, though. I had to get out of this cage. I made a finger gun with one hand and summoned the power of the tree, pointing it carefully at the clasp which held my collar closed. The bolt of lightning singed my neck, but it did its job, severing the lock which kept me prisoner in the collar. The glass shattered all around me at the same time, and I recoiled as it hit my face, cutting my skin and ricocheting off my eyelids. Then I jumped out from the space I'd been kept in. I completely forgot I was in bare feet, though, since I was really excited about getting away. "Ow, ow, ow!" I screamed, tearing off my shirt and ripping it in half, fashioning it into a pair of makeshift John McClane shoes. By the time I was done, the citizens of the area were on the street, approaching me angrily. "Back!" I screamed, pointing my finger guns at them like a kid playing cops and robbers. I shot a few blasts of lightning towards the nearby prisoners' cages. The glass shattered up and down the street, and people began to back away from me, looking afraid. I broke the rest of the prisoners out with a few well-placed blasts of lightning, and watched satisfied as they began to run in different directions. A few were captured by the power of the collars holding them, but there were too many overall, and several got away, escaping into a nearby forest. Then I tried to think about Earth, and being home, attempting in some way to summon a portal that would take me back. I looked at the wand in my hand and willed it to make a portal which would open back on Earth. Such a thing was possible, I knew, since I'd seen plenty of sorcerers make portals, and it didn't seem to require any finite magic like the other spells did. Traveling between worlds was a talent every magic user appeared to be capable of, as long as they had the proper equipment. "Earth! Portal! Magic wand, do your thing!" I yelled, feeling stupid, but hoping somehow the multiverse would understand. A black hole opened up in front of me, and I stepped inside, unsure what to expect on the other end. The last thing I anticipated is what I saw when I came through, back into the world of Earth. Xavier was at the workbench in his garage, and a kid with freckles and red hair who I didn't recognize was handing him a cup of coffee. He took a sip and made a loud, satisfied sound, smacking his lips. "Now this is a double-double. Great job, kid. You're 10 times better than the last..." He noticed me appear through a portal in the wall and spit out his coffee. "Oh, great. Look who decided to come back. Well, you're not just walking in here and getting your robes back that easily. I already have a new apprentice. This is Eric. He's already learned 7 spells." I stared at him in disbelief for a few long moments. "Oh, so his name you managed to learn? I really should go over to the dark side, you know? Sure, Grupe may have teleported me over to some hellish place where I was imprisoned inside a glass cube for the past few months, but at least she came to save me. You didn't even notice I was missing. And the whole time, I thought you were coming for me, any second. Meanwhile, you didn't even care. You were just over here training my replacement." Eric looked at Xavier with a disappointed expression on his face. "Dude, you're like a terrible person." He marched out of the garage and threw his robes at me. I had never actually received any prior to that moment. "Here, take the stupid robes and the spells. I don't even want them. They're ridiculous." I stood in the doorway of the garage with the robes in my hands, trying to decide whether to leave or stay. Xavier tapped his staff twice on the floor and looked at me, raising his bushy eyebrows and clearing his throat. He had tears in his eyes, I was surprised to see. and he looked like a kindly old Gandalf for a moment. My apologies, dear boy. I should have known you wouldn't just abandon me like that. I should have gone looking for you. I saw a tear run down his cheek, and I realized the old guy really did feel terrible. If something like this should ever happen again, I will not stop until I found you. I promise. All these years, all these different apprentices, none of them stuck with me. I've come to expect you to abandon me, and that's not fair to you. Can you ever forgive this poor old fool of a sorcerer? It took me a few moments to decide, but eventually I relented. All right, Xavier, I forgive you, but you need to try harder from now on, and you need to trust me if I'm going to be your replacement. No more uneven footing. It's you and me. We're partners now, got it? He harumphed. Highly irregular, but I suppose what they say is true. If something isn't working, you don't keep trying it again and again in hopes it will suddenly work. You have to change your tact. And maybe I have to change my ways a bit too. I couldn't help but smile. We were finally getting somewhere. Great. Now, let's figure out how to defeat this dark wizard, okay? Because I don't want to get sent to another dimension again. It was really terrible. There were goats there. I yelled this last part at him, as if it would explain it all somehow. Oh my, that does sound awful. Oh, and hey, look at that. You've got a wand. Congratulations. That means you must have killed one of your rivals. He picked up the wand and inspected it closely. Oh, you defeated Derek. No small feat. Maybe I underestimated you after all. I didn't have the heart to tell him that I didn't defeat anyone, but that meant Grupe had killed one of Xavier's former apprentices, and now she was even more powerful than ever. Suddenly, the wand in my hand didn't feel like a gift anymore. It felt like a dueling pistol, and I had just been challenged to a battle for life or death against a far superior opponent. Walking home on my injured feet was difficult. Glass shards were still trapped inside my skin, and I felt pain like little bolts of lightning running through my foot at times when I stepped on a pebble or put too much pressure on it. Halfway home, I had to stop and rest, sitting down on the curb and trembling from the pain. I only hoped I'd be home soon, and that my parents wouldn't be too upset at my absence for the past several months. Ow! Ow! Stop! Why? I heard someone's voice coming from behind me, from the other side of a bush. Getting up slowly, I walked over on my tender feet to take a look. Help! 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 The screams cut off abruptly. I limped around to the other side of the shrub, and saw Grupe sitting atop the dead body of Xavier's most recent failed apprentice. His face was frozen in a scream of terror. Hey you, she said with an innocent voice. How is everything? Are you happy to be back on Earth? You're welcome, by the way. I wasn't entirely sure what to say. She had just killed an innocent kid, and yet I felt deeply indebted to her for saving my life. It didn't seem right to criticize her at that moment. Everything's fine, I said, trying not to look at the dead body she was sitting on. What, happened to our friend there? Oh, him? I killed him. You know, to take his powers. You really should get on that, by the way. You're gonna get destroyed when we have our final showdown. Sorry, what? You gotta kill some of these old apprentices. Didn't my dad tell you? It's a Highlander type situation. You kill them, you get stronger. And you really need to get stronger. Like I said, I'm gonna wipe the floor with you. I just gave you that wand so it wouldn't be a total cakewalk. I had completely forgotten about the wand. It was back at Xavier's garage. I backed away slowly, hoping she didn't pick this moment for our duel. You forgot it, didn't you? Man, you were gonna be so easy to kill. Turning on my heel, I broke into a sprint and ran from her, heading back to Xavier's place. I was starting to get the feeling I'd need a lot more than finger guns to deal with her. Are you sure you're ready for this, boy? Your first solo quest. That's a big deal, you know? The old sorcerer was giving me a sad look, as if he could break into tears at any second. He reached out and straightened my robes, tugging on the fabric at my shoulders. I felt a bit more comfortable in the scratchy brown wool afterwards, and realized it had been choking me slightly. I was reminded momentarily of my first day of school, my parents preening me as I stood waiting for the bus all those years ago. Ironically, I hadn't actually been to school for quite a long time. This was my school now. Xavier had arranged that somehow with his sorcery, convincing my parents and the school board that he was now my new homeschool teacher. I'd been accepted into his highly competitive program since I was such a gifted student. I would have preferred Hogwarts. I'm ready, Xavier. And besides, this isn't my first time on my own. Remember when I got trapped in that other dimension for a few months? Alone? He made an annoyed sound from his mouth, which reminded me a bit of an old mule about to kick someone. You're never gonna let me live that one down, are you? Nope. I turned around to leave when he stopped me and called me back. What is it? Let me see that wand of yours for a moment, he said, and I gave it to him reluctantly. You know I need that, right? He didn't say anything, just picked at the wood with his fingers for a second, then told me to hold out my hand. I did as he asked, and he grazed the wand against my outstretched digits. A moment later, I felt a terrible pain in my finger. It stung like a bee had just gotten me. Ow! What'd you do that for? He handed the wand back to me, smiling deviously. You have a splinter of the all-world tree in your finger now, boy. That means you have just enough magic to summon a portal back here, if you ever get trapped in another dimension again. It's just enough for one trip, so use it sparingly. But now, if you get defeated by Clint and he steals your wand, you can still survive. I wanted to thank him, but then thought about what all this meant. Why didn't you do this last time? Maybe if you'd done this before, I wouldn't have been stuck in that other dimension for all those months. His face turned a shade redder. On your way now, and good luck with Clint. He's an ice cold son of a bitch. Huh? I tried to ask him more, but before I knew it, he had summoned a swirling purple vortex which was suspended in the air before me. Then he shoved me rudely into it. Nothing. Good luck, kid. I heard his words echoing in my ears, fading off into the distance before cutting off abruptly as the portal closed. I fell hard onto my back, landing in the snow. Immediately, I was freezing cold and shivering uncontrollably. What the hell, Xavier? It's like minus 30 in this dimension. You could have told me to bring a damp jacket. There was nothing but silence, except for the sounds of howling wind all around me, and the crunch of snow beneath my feet. The mix of snow and hail which rained down from the dark gray clouds above bit into my fingers and cheeks. I remembered the hood on the brown apprentice robe I'd just been given, and pulled it up over my head, suddenly feeling a little bit warmer. There was a pocket on the front as well, like my favorite hoodie, so I stuck my hands in there, and they were no longer as cold either. The apprentice robe was well insulated, and now only my feet felt frozen, the ice and snow seeping into my cheap running shoes. A huge ice-crusted castle could be seen up ahead, and I began to run toward it as fast as I could, hoping it would be marginally warmer inside. The smoke was rising from multiple chimneys, which indicated someone was home, and likely more than one person. The twisting turrets and spires of the ancient castle were frosted with ice and blue-tinged snow. It rose up higher into the sky than should have been possible, its peak lost in the clouds above. This is more like it, I said to myself, shivering. That Derek guy's hideout was a joke. This is some Game of Thrones shit right here. Finally, I reached the front doors, and they swung open as I approached. The huge wooden planks which made up the doors were 10 times taller than me, and twice as wide. A giant door knocker was mounted on each side, forged to resemble the faces of terrifying twin dragons. Wrought iron hinges and locks made the entryway look formidable, as if it could withstand a battering ram. I stepped inside and found myself in a huge stone-floored foyer in this intimidating castle. My footsteps echoed back loudly, and I felt very exposed, as there were balconies above and a tall, winding staircase which led down towards me. Oil paintings in fine frames hung from the walls. Tapestries and suits of armor decorated the room, and heads of gargantuan animals were mounted everywhere on the walls and even on the ceiling. As if there wasn't enough room on the walls for all of Clint's kills. Among the faces of animals from various dimensions, I saw people's decapitated heads mounted on the walls as well. Many, many people. Men and women, old and young. Why the hell had Xavier let me go after this guy first? He was a goddamn killing machine. Hey, punk, said a shadowy form which approached from the second floor, descending the stairs. I take it you're the new apprentice Bruca's been going on and on about? She's kind of obsessed with you. I'll be happy to give her one less thing to talk about. That really caught me off guard. Suddenly I forgot all about this battle for a second. Did Bruca actually like me? No girl had ever liked me before. I'd always thought it was all an act. That she was only playing me to get to Xavier's key. Wait, she talks about me? Really? Before I could say anything else, he had his wand in his hand, and he was twirling it around and pointing at the stairs beneath his feet. The surface of them turned to an ice slide, and he began riding it down towards me. Then he created a magical ice snowboard which he rode with ease, hopping up on the railings and riding down on them to greet me. I was so surprised by his approach that I had my wand lowered to my side, watching him in stunned fascination as he came toward me like a freight train. He began to accumulate ice and snow all around him, forming himself into a huge avalanche which was coming right for me. At the last second, I dove out of the way, and he collapsed into the wall behind me with the shuddering impact of his blow. Stones fell from the ceiling and landed all around me, luckily not on me. Clint strode back into the foyer from the giant hole he'd made in the wall. The cold air was rushing in behind him, but I saw he had a warm-looking gray coat on, which appeared insulated for the weather. A thick hood lined with fur was pulled up around his face, shrouding his features in darkness. As he strode through the wreckage he'd made, the hole began to seal itself back up behind him, the stones reassembling themselves into walls, where there had only been air a moment earlier. Before I knew it, the building was whole again, and there was no sign of the recent disaster. It's a cold world we live in, Clint said, weaving his wand through the air menacingly. A cold, cruel world, isn't it? He paused, looking at me with his eyebrows raised. I just realized, I don't even know your name. Sorry, man. I'm Clint. Nice to meet you. He stuck out his hand, and for just a second, I almost reached out to take it, instinctively, but I caught myself at the last second. No thanks. But he didn't stop approaching. He just kept coming at me. Ice form, he said aloud, and he began to glow faintly blue. A moment later, he turned into a liquid version of himself, like the T-1000, white steam pouring off his shoulders and the top of his head. he was still coming towards me, moving fast like a football player coming in for a tackle. Terrified, I was instantly concerned of what would happen if I made contact with him. Sub-Zero's ice clone attack came to mind from Mortal Kombat. I remembered once in science class when a teacher brought in a container of liquid nitrogen and showed us some experiments with it, turning a rose into glass-like ice which would shatter into a million pieces if dropped. Then I pictured myself turning into that. Badly frightened, I did the first thing I could think to do. The first spell I'd been taught, aside from the lightning bolt spell, which I was sick to death of. I had vowed not to use it this time, unless I really had to. It was a crutch more than anything. There was so much more magic in the All-World Tree than simple lightning. Plus, it would be the first thing Clint would expect. Xavier had spent time training me, and it was time to use that training. I tried to focus, clearly remembering the sand world. I pictured it in my mind's eye, and imagined the heat of the sun, the stinging wind in my eyes, and the sand in my shoes. A second later, I was rising up on a mountain of sand, brought through a portal by the piece of the All-World Tree which I held in my hand. I did it! I did it! I couldn't help but yell, rising on a tidal wave of sand. I was pretty excited, even though I was in the middle of a fight to the death. Clint ran into the sand, and I really didn't expect what happened next, since I missed most of my science classes to Apprentice with Xavier. Just imagine what you'd see if you threw a mountain of sand on a person made of liquid nitrogen. His liquid blue skin began to steam in an instant, and the sand all around him began to harden instantly. Xavier's former apprentice began to scream as he evaporated into the sand, turning into steam and transferring his essence into a trillion individual grains all around him. My triumph was short-lived, though, as the mountain of sand began to grow higher and higher, and I realized I had forgotten how to turn it off. Xavier had fixed this problem for me the last time, but now I was on my own. Sand continued to pour out of my wand from the desert dimension, and I swear I heard the All-World Tree in my mind, crying out in pain and confusion. It hurt me just to hear it, and I realized I was draining the essence of some other dimension and causing an imbalance. The entire multiverse was begging me to stop, but I couldn't. I didn't know how. Sandicus Bacchus! Indigo Arden Crocus! I yelled, trying to remember the words Xavier had said to stop the flow of sand last time. The flow of sand finally began to slow down, and eventually stopped completely. But by that time, I was up near the second floor balcony, elevated high on a mountain of sand. I started making my way down, sliding on my ass and trying not to build up too much momentum, since there was a solid stone wall at the bottom. And Clint's wand. I could see it lying in the sand, pointing upwards into the air like a trophy for me to collect. Practically salivating, I stood and began running down the sandy slope toward it. But just before I got there, a portal appeared, and Baruka stepped out from it. She picked up the wand and held it in her hands, admiring it with her purple, glowing eyes. I slowed down and dropped down into the sand to stop myself from running into her. About 20 feet from her, I stood again and regarded her, taking out my wand and readying myself for another battle. But she didn't want to fight me yet, I realized. She wanted to save me for last. You know, it's not too late for you and I to work together, she said, flashing me a look with those eyes. You're kind of doing my work for me anyways. Might as well make the partnership official. She took the new wand she just acquired from Clint and held it up against her own. The two wands started bending and twisting and braiding themselves together like vines, until eventually they settled and froze in place once again, only now as one. Bruke held up this new, much larger wand. It was twice as big as mine, and twice as powerful, I imagined. So, how about it? You know you're gonna lose. Just because I'm keeping you alive until the end doesn't mean I'm interested in a fair fight. I'm gonna have a staff the size of Xavier's by the time this is all finished. I won't even need his key anymore. I'll have all the power I need. Oh, bullshit, I said, more angrily than I intended. That key is the only thing keeping the multiverse together. You just want me to think it isn't, so I'll drop my guard. You've already shown your cards, Bruke. I know your game. She just smiled and turned, quickly spinning her now much larger wand in a spiral and creating a swirling purple vortex in the wall. I thought she would disappear into it without another word, but she surprised me by turning around and giving me one last shot at her. I decided I would make sure she regretted it. You know what the difference is between you and me? She asked cockily. Yeah, I said, surprising her. You're too full of yourself to realize when you're in trouble. I pointed the wand at her, and the wall of sand behind me created a massive fist the size of a transport truck. It hurtled toward her, and I saw her eyes widen with surprise as it was about to impact her. But then, at the last second, she ducked into the portal and disappeared. The fist made of sand collided with the stone wall and punched a huge hole through it, and cold air rushed in a moment later. I stood shivering in the freezing foyer of the castle once again. Sand was everywhere, and I realized I had ruined what had essentially been a really badass hideout that I could have claimed for my own. I'd been to the beach with my parents before. There was no way I was getting all that sand out of the carpets. This fantastic hideout was completely ruined. Well, this hideout is completely ruined, Xavier muttered, his white beard whipping around his face in the cold winds. Too bad. It had some real Game of Thrones vibes. We were standing in the sand-filled foyer of the ruined castle of Clint, Xavier's former apprentice, who I had just killed. A giant hole in the stone wall of the main level let in the howling wind and blowing snow, which had begun to fill the foyer of the medieval-style castle all around us. The old sorcerer was giving me a strange look, staring at me with his brows raised. So, let's see this upgraded wand. You must be pretty pleased with yourself. To be honest, I wasn't sure if you were up to the challenge. I hesitated, then pulled the same old wand from the pocket of my brown robes that he'd seen before. The one which belonged to his other apprentice, who I had not been able to defeat. There was no good way of telling him that Bruke, the dark sorceress who was my nemesis, had stolen the wand from me at the last possible moment, right after I'd started celebrating my victory over Clint. So I just said it. Bruke stole it, right after I killed Clint. She snuck in through a portal and combined his wand with hers. What? How? She shouldn't have been able to do that. Like I said before, this is a Highlander-type situation. You can't take another sorcerer's powers without killing them first. That's how it's always been. Well, looks like she figured a way around it. And what's going to stop her from doing the same thing again next time? Xavier began to pace the snow-cluttered room, kicking the white powder into the air with his boots occasionally, in childish outbursts of anger. He was muttering and cursing under his breath, saying things in an ancient language that I didn't understand. But then he stopped dead in his tracks and turned to look at me, focusing in on the wand, which I still held in my hand. Give me that. He snatched it from my hand and began to examine it more closely. Whispering incantations, he waved his hand over the surface of it, inspecting it from an inch away. Aha! Just as I suspected. What? What is it? He twiddled his fingers, and I saw the polished wood begin to change, the colors of it shifting before my eyes. Runes had been scratched into it, burnt with black magic. Blast! That dark wizard fooled me again. He used some sort of ancient spell to etch her name into this wand. That means whoever you kill with it will count as hers. And she can track you. She can see everything you're doing, including this right now. He threw the wand across the room, and it hit the far wall, clattering off the stone and landing softly in a heap of snow. "Hey, that's my wand!" I yelled, running over and snatching it up, having flashbacks of Grupe swiping the other one. "No, it isn't. It's hers. If you continue to use it, you'll just be giving her more power. Don't you see, boy? She hoodwinked us again." I stared at him stupidly. "She bamboozled us. It was a shell game, a thimble rig, a scam, a flim-flam, a sham, bunco, sting, swindle. Why are you looking at me like that? I couldn't possibly be any clearer." "You mean she tricked us?" "Yes." Go figure. No wonder she gave me that wand." "She gave it to you?" That was when I realized. I had never told him that part. I guess in retrospect, I should have known it was too good to be true. "Well, back to square one," Xavier said, setting the wand down inside a black box and shutting the lid. He put it up on a high shelf and cast another spell, which made the whole piece of furniture disappear, so that it just looked like another bare wall. We were back in his workshop now, and I was feeling lower than I had in some time. "That will keep her from spying on us. But there's still the issue of finding you a proper wand. This one is obviously not meant for you. But at least we can keep it from the hands of evil." "And by evil, you mean your daughter?" "Of course. Who else would I be talking about? I'm starting to think she's the one to be concerned about. Far more than that dark wizard she's been following. I wouldn't be surprised if she concocted this whole plan herself. It stinks of her deceit. Even the Dark One himself isn't this clever." I had to admit, he was right. She'd been 3 steps ahead of us right from the start. "So, what's the plan, Xavier? I need a new wand. Should we go after the next apprentice? What about that chaotic neutral guy you always talk about?" The old sorcerer sat down heavily at his workbench. "No, not him. He's too powerful. He's really learned to embrace the chaos, turning himself into a force to be reckoned with. If I know Grupe, even she would not risk challenging him until she's at full strength." The coffee machine clicked, indicating it was ready, and I went over to it immediately and got a mug ready for Xavier. I carefully poured the cream first into the cup, then the coffee, then the sugar. Using his favorite spoon, I swirled the concoction together. I was really starting to figure out this apprenticing stuff, I thought to myself, handing him the cup. Okay, if not him, then we have 2 other options left. Who are the other 2 apprentices? And which one should I challenge next? Well, let's see. There's Sam, and then there's Jed. He took a sip of the steaming coffee and spit it out, spraying the hot liquid everywhere. Then he began scraping at his tongue with his fingernails, trying to get the remnants of it out of his mouth. "Water!" Xavier croaked. "Oh no," I thought to myself. He's been poisoned. Grupe must have snuck into the workshop while we were at Clint's castle. She never rested for a minute. I ran over to get him a glass of water from the sink and brought it back. The old sorcerer guzzled down half the cup, gargling, and then spit it onto the floor. "That coffee tastes like hot garbage. What'd you do to it?" "Same as always. I turned the machine on and poured in the water. Hit the brew button. Problem?" "Oh no. Don't tell me. Have you just been reusing the same coffee grounds every time? No wonder it always tastes worse than the time before." He poured the murky puddle water on the concrete floor in disdain. "I don't like to do this, but I have no choice. You have disappointed me for the last time." The sorcerer looked menacing and tall suddenly, towering over me. his hair and beard whipping around his face in an unseen wind. Lightning and thunder crackled in the distance, despite the clear sky outside. And I saw a fire burning in his eyes like I'd never seen before. "We'll have to get drive-through. Come on, kid." He pointed his staff at the driveway, and a car appeared. It looked like a Ford. Let me guess. From the car dimension? Xavier laughed loudly. Don't be ridiculous. Always buy domestic. And you kids wonder why there's no good manufacturing jobs in this country anymore. 10 minutes later, the two of us were sitting in the parking lot of the nearby coffee shop, sipping our drinks. I had opted for a latte, but Xavier was sticking with his patented double-double. "Now, let's get this settled. You can choose your next victim. Apprentice to challenge. First, there's Sam, a skilled practitioner in the use of emotional magic." Emotional magic? What the hell? Okay, that's an easy one. I'll take on Sam first. I don't even need to hear about the other guy. Xavier looked surprised. "Oh, well, okay. That's settled. You seem to have this all figured out." He took another sip of his coffee to wash down the bite of honey cruller he was slowly masticating in his mouth. The worst part of getting old? Well, there's lots of them. But the lack of saliva is really frustrating sometimes. He dumped some more coffee into his maw, like a baker with dough that's a little too dry, adding more liquid, and continued chewing. "Okay, Sam it is. We should take a week to prepare, at the very least," Xavier said, his mouth still working. "A week? I can't wait that long. Bruca's out there right now, killing more apprentices and taking their wands. If we wait, they'll all be dead by the time we get there." Xavier thought about this, playing with his beard and fiddling with his mustache. "You have a point. We have to go now. Both of us. If I have you with me, then Sam should be no problem, right?" He mumbled something disagreeable and then eventually nodded. "All right, we'll go. But you have to keep in mind, Sam is a master of emotional manipulation, with access to all the accompanying powers from that quadrant of the multiverse. That means you have to be rock solid mentally before entering that battle. If you have any weaknesses, you can count on Sam to expose them." I thought about this for a little while. Whatever emotions I had were easy enough to keep in check. After battling the Ice Wizard, Clint, and the Rat Whisperer, Derek, I thought an emotional magic user would be a piece of cake. After all, what was the worst they could do? Make me cry? "Let's go. I'm ready," I said. "Time to get myself a wand. A real one this time." "All right," Xavier replied. "Let me just finish this first." He took a tentative sip of his coffee, tried to guzzle it, and then stopped. Too hot." He held his finger to the side of the cup and pointed at it with a concerted effort. I felt a bit of magical energy flowing through the staff, lingering in the air around us, and shivered. It was suddenly a bit cooler in the car, despite the hot day outside. Xavier took another sip of his coffee, this time much longer, and smacked his lips, looking satisfied. Much better. Perfect drinking temperature." Apparently, the rules about using the powers of the multiverse sparingly only applied to me. "Okay, step through the portal, boy. Same as the first time against Derek. I'll be with you the whole way. I'll try not to interfere as much this time, though. Just remember to stay strong, and that you have the infinite wisdom and strength of the multiverse on your side." I nodded, stepping through the swirling blue vortex. Stepping out on the other side, I found myself in a field of roses. The flowers were in full bloom, their thorns looking viciously pointed. If I moved any direction, I would bump into a thorn bush, it seemed. Not far in the distance, I saw a sprawling palace. It was painted in pale gold, and a path was leading toward it from the center of the field of roses. If I could just get to that path, I knew I would be able to reach the gate with no problem. Xavier plunged out of the portal next, landing in a tumble of thorns and snapping several delicate rose stems in the process. "Ow, ow, ow!" he muttered, standing up and pulling the stems and branches from his cheeks and hands, where the thorns were embedded. I noticed there were odd-looking black streaks beginning to quickly spread from the wounds where his skin had been pierced. These vein-like streaks were growing rapidly longer, moving in the direction of Xavier's heart. He looked down at his hands with growing concern. "Oh dear, that's not good at all," were the last words from the sorcerer's mouth as he collapsed in the dirt. He looked to be sleeping, making loud snoring sounds with his lips flapping together like a horse with each exhale. Black, poisonous-looking veins were still spreading all over his skin, growing outwards from where the thorns had stabbed him. They spread across his face, and I imagined them slowly advancing towards the old man's heart. And with that thought, the old man exhaled a breath of air. Only this time, he did not take another breath afterwards. He lay silent, still, and unmoving among the roses. "Xavier? Xavier, wake up! Please, wake up!" I was shaking the old sorcerer by his shoulders, and trying not to get stabbed by any of the sharp rose stems which had poisoned him. They were still stuck in his skin and covered his robes with barbs. The two of us had gone through a portal to fight Sam, his former apprentice and master of emotional magic, whatever the hell that was. But as soon as Xavier fell through the portal, he had been impaled by rose thorns. Those thorns had incapacitated him with a lethal toxin, and had now caused him to completely cease breathing. I felt for a heartbeat, but there was nothing. His lips began to turn blue as he remained motionless, sprawled out in the field of roses. I realized he could actually die. He wasn't invincible, after all. Once upon a time, he had been a boy just like me. "You can't die like this. I was just starting to learn something from you. You can't leave me yet. I'm not ready." I realized I was crying as tears pattered softly to the soil beneath my feet. For a while, I just stood there, staring at his body. It didn't seem possible that it could be true. It made me want to go home, to give up hope, and to give up on this entire ridiculous goal of becoming the new Guardian. I almost did retreat. I was very close to doing so. But then I heard a whisper in my mind's ear, telling me not to quit. It was so quiet it was barely understandable, but it was there. A familiar voice like Xavier's, telling me to keep pressing forward. This was important, as important a quest as ever there was. To save the multiverse. And I was the only one who could. I remembered the Abyss dimensions, the floating cats with no kibble, and the dark wizard who wanted to unmake the multiverse so that he could remake it to suit his needs and benefit him. There was only one person standing in the way of all that now. Me. After taking a deep, shuddering breath, I picked up Xavier's staff. My staff now. I looked around the field of roses and tried to figure out a way to get to Sam's sprawling palace in the distance. If not for Sam, Xavier would still be alive. Sam had planted the roses which had poisoned him, and I would get my revenge. "So you're really gonna try to fight me, huh, loser?" I spun around to see a girl about my age dressed in dark clothing. She had long, black hair with pink highlights and facial piercings, making her look like one of the goth kids from my high school. In her hand, she held a long, slender magic wand with a black rose curled around its shaft. "You killed him," I shouted. "He was just trying to help people. You killed him." The girl smirked at me, laughing. "He deserved to die for coming here. Same as you. Any last words?" I couldn't think of anything clever, so I shot a lightning bolt at her. She dove out of the way, concealing herself among the roses. Their thorns didn't seem to affect her, as she used the flowers for cover and began racing in my direction, the leaves rustling with her movements. A moment later, her voice was behind me. This totally threw me off, since I had thought she was in front of me. Turning, I took my attention off the body of my dead master. "Poor Xavier," she said in a mocking tone. "He trusted you, and what did that get him? A failed apprentice, a dead sorcerer, and a forgotten key." I turned around to see she had been throwing her voice like a ventriloquist, and had been in front of me the whole time. And she was grabbing something from Xavier's dead body. "The key!" I shouted, realizing too late that I had forgotten the most crucial thing, and had left it exposed. Above all else, I was to protect that key with my life if Xavier passed away. He had told me this on multiple occasions. The key was the symbol of the All-World Tree, a talisman of its unlimited power. I still didn't know exactly what it did, but I figured it was really important for some reason or other. And I had just forgotten about it at the worst possible moment. "Oh, Brooke is going to be very happy with me," she said, smiling. "Maybe she'll even want to get back together again." "What? You dated her too? Did everybody in the frickin' multiverse go out with my ex?" She disappeared back into the roses again and laughed teasingly. "Oh, you poor, poor, simple-minded boy. I can see why she's been going easy on you. But don't expect the same treatment from me." She sent a flurry of roses my way from where she stood. They shot out from the ground like rockets, and came careening toward me as I dove out of the way, barely avoiding their deadly poison. "You stand no chance," she called to me from everywhere, her voice echoing in the air around me. "This is my domain. You've lost your mentor and his most prized possession. Xavier must be embarrassed that he ever met you." That last statement made me pause. Sam was a master of emotional magic. She could manipulate people into making bad decisions by exploiting their fears and their sadness, their love and their rage. But she had made one mistake. She had referred to Xavier in the present tense just now. Xavier must be embarrassed that he ever met you. Not Xavier would have been embarrassed or Xavier was embarrassed. Instead, she had referred to the old sorcerer as if he was still alive. Was it possible this whole thing had been an illusion, contrived to make me fail in my quest? What if Xavier was standing right beside me, invisible like he had been when we fought Derek? "Xavier, if you're still alive and you didn't say anything this whole time, I'm gonna be really upset. I mean, I'll be glad you're still breathing, but I'll be pissed that you let me believe you died." There was a moment of silence, which stretched on forever, but then I heard a low grumbling sound. It could have been mistaken for a thunderstorm brewing in the distance, if not for the fact that I knew Xavier's displeased mouth sounds far too well. "Oh, you son of a bitch." Now I was pissed. Not so much at Sam, but I was more than happy to take it out on her. "Vines!" I shouted, pointing the staff in the direction of Sam's last attack. A wall of jungle vines sprouted from the ground in the middle of the field of roses, sending dirt and soil flying through the air. And I saw Sam flying through the air as well, propelled by the force of 1,000 tons of foliage suddenly blossoming from beneath her. She came careening back down towards the ground, like a satellite returning from orbit unexpectedly. Her body was wreathed in flames, and she was screaming with what might have been fear. But then I realized it was unbridled rage. "Look what you did to my roses!" she screamed, her trajectory leveling off and her velocity slowing at the last second. She descended like Supergirl, and then hovered softly above the ground in front of me. "You destroyed my garden. You stupid, stupid boy." I looked around and saw that she was right. Approximately an acre of what had previously been prize-winning roses was now overgrown with jungle and full of buzzing mosquitoes. "Well, you made me believe Xavier was dead, so we're even." She held up the imaginary key, which she had taken from his imaginary dead body, and I saw it disappear, fading from existence before my eyes. And then the staff in my hand disappeared as well. It wasn't real either, I realized. "I'm done with you," Sam said, turning around and marching back toward her palace. "I'm not doing this right now." "What? You can't just turn around and go back inside. This isn't over. We're fighting." "You're fighting. I'm going inside," she said, ignoring my pleas for incivility. "Xavier, stop her. She's not allowed to do that, is she?" There was no response from the invisible sorcerer. It seemed this was up to me to figure out. And something about attacking a retreating opponent just didn't sit right with me. "Okay, fine. I'll come back tomorrow. But then we're fighting for real. I'm serious." She waved her hand at me, and I sighed, feeling defeated. Turning around, I summoned a portal back to Earth. At least I knew how to do that myself now, and wasn't dependent on Xavier to get me home. He was still hiding in some invisible state, refusing to speak or come out. "Okay, I'm going back to Earth, Xavier. Stay here if you want. I'm not going to attack somebody when their back is turned and they don't want to fight. We'll come back tomorrow." There was still no response, and so I stepped inside the portal alone. When I came out on the other side, I was back home again. With my parents this time, not in Xavier's workshop. Strange, since that wasn't what I'd been picturing. But I guess I had been feeling a little homesick. It would be nice to spend some time with my parents for a change. I was standing outside my bedroom door, and the portal closed up behind me, disappearing. "Feels nice to be back home," I said, turning the knob and pushing open my bedroom door. A strange kid with blonde hair and glasses was standing in the middle of my room, picking up one of my favorite toys and playing with it. "Who are you?" he asked, looking at me curiously. "Who am I? Who are you? This is my bedroom." "No, this is my room." "Mom, Dad," we both called at the same time. My parents came up the stairs and looked at us both. "Oh, you're home. That's nice. I hope you're not bothered. We rented out your room to a foreign exchange student. You haven't been here that much, so we figured you wouldn't mind." "What? Of course I mind. This is my bedroom. I sleep here." "Well, now that's not a very nice way to welcome our guest. You can sleep on the floor, sweetie. It'll be good for you." My mom pushed me into the room and closed the door behind me. I was left alone with the strange kid who was now pulling the arm off of one of my action figures. "Can you not do that? It's a collectible." "This piece of junk? It's not even mint in box. You'd be lucky to get back store credit." He succeeded in pulling the arm all the way free from the Michelangelo Ninja Turtle. It snapped off and plastic shards went flying. "Okay, new rule. No touching anything." My Nintendo Switch was on the floor beside a small flat-screen TV, and his eyes drifted over to it, settling on the electronics as an evil grin spread slowly across his face. "Don't you dare. Don't you even think about it." "A Nintendo Switch?" he said mockingly, moving quickly towards my most prized possession. "You don't even have a PS5? Where's your VR rig?" "I don't have one." I was edging closer, nervous of what he might do. "You know, I'm doing you a favor. This system's trash. Maybe now your mom will pay to get you a decent one." The kid spoke with an annoying, nasally voice, raising up his booted foot over the system and bringing it down hard as I screamed and dove towards it protectively, like a Secret Service agent trying to stop a bullet. He brought his boot down hard on the gaming system. Sparks flew and plastic pieces cracked off from the expensive piece of equipment. I had saved up for a full year and used all my Christmas and birthday money to buy it. It was my favorite thing in the world, and I thought about my save files with hundreds of hours of Stardew Valley and Breath of the Wild being wiped away in an instant, and howled with unbridled rage. If there was one possession that would send me into a fury if destroyed, it was that. Spittle flew from my mouth as I screamed at the kid, yelling curses and obscenities at him. And then my mom and dad came marching in and pulled me out of the room by my ear. "How dare you talk to our guests like that?" my mom yelled, her face red and angry. "If you can't learn to share your space with them, you could just sleep in the attic with the mice," my dad yelled, pulling on a string which hung from the ceiling. Strange. I hadn't noticed the string before that moment. A ladder came down, and he pointed up into the darkness and told me to go. The foreign exchange student popped his head out of my room and looked on at the scene, smiling ruefully. I almost started going up the ladder, but this whole thing was just a little too weird. For a second, I paused, looking back and forth at both of my parents' faces. There was something off about both of them. They looked as if they were daydreaming. "Hey, Dad, what's my best friend's name?" I asked, suddenly suspicious. He glared at me with hateful, half-asleep eyes, completely unlike the looks I usually got from him, which were tolerant and kind. "You don't have any friends," he scoffed. That did it. Suddenly, I understood exactly what was happening. My dad knew I didn't have any friends, but he'd never be so rude as to say that to my face. Turning around, I pointed my finger guns at the foreign exchange student and pulled the triggers. The bolts of lightning hit him square in the chest, and when it did, it burnt a hole through him and turned him back into his true form. Sam. She lay sputtering and spitting up blood on the floor of my room, and her magic wand rolled from her hand, reappearing and becoming visible as it left her possession. A hole the size of a basketball was burnt into her chest, and there wasn't any chance of a snappy action movie quip or anything of the sort, as she lay there turning pale and cold. It was slightly disappointing. But then I snatched her wand off the floor and held it up triumphantly, and it was all worthwhile. My parents were blinking and looking around with stunned expressions on their faces when Xavier popped out from a portal suddenly and began whooping like a barn owl. "Whoo! Whoo whoo! You messed that little emo girl up good! You did it, boy! Your first real victory!" My parents gasped, and my dad fainted suddenly at the sight of the dead body of a teenage girl in my room. I guess they had both been hypnotized somehow by Sam, and I couldn't blame them for the terrible things they'd said to me, even if they were true. Before I could tell them anything, my mom started to scream at us both. "This is what you've been doing after school?" My parents were not happy when they found out what I'd been doing after school. It turned out my mentor was not a Harvard-educated tutor, as they had been led to believe. They were seeing for the first time what I had known for months. Xavier was a powerful sorcerer, a protector of the universe, and sworn guardian of this corner of the multiverse. "You're his teacher? You must be 103 years old!" my mom was yelling at Xavier, as my dad regained consciousness from his fainting episode. "Well, actually, I'm 1,008 years old, give or take a few. It's kinda hard to keep track after a millennia." "Oh, great. And he's completely insane on top of everything else." My dad was struggling to his feet and blinking his eyes repeatedly, looking stunned. "Did I just see what I think I saw? Did you just shoot lightning bolts out of your fingertips, young man? Xavier looked nonplussed. He simply waved his hands in the air and began to speak in a low voice. Oh, we don't have time for this. Okay, you two. Look into my eyes. Don't remember. Misremember. This November. My parents blinked and stood like zombies in front of us, their arms hanging limply at their sides. Then they collapsed to the floor, snoring loudly. Xavier grabbed my arm and yanked me down the stairs forcefully. There, that takes care of that. Now, let's get back to your training. Neither my mom nor my dad would remember any of what had just happened, which was good news for me, since I just shot a girl with a lightning bolt and they were probably going to ground me for that. Or, even worse, take my Nintendo Switch away. You're really going to need to teach me that spell, I said as we walked out the front door. That one would come in handy. Later that day, after a brief rest and a trip to the local diner for waffles and syrup with extra whipped cream and strawberries, we traveled back to the Abyss Dimension. What are we doing back here again? I complained to Xavier, instantly feeling depressed. It was hard not to be saddened by this place, looking around at all the cats floating through the air. The crumbling houses and streets, cars and lampposts all drifting in a sea of darkness. Nothing was alive except for the cats. I told you, he said. There's something off about this place. It could be the key to everything. And besides, I figured this would be a good place for you to start your training against the Chaos Kid, as he's come to be known across the multiverse. He's 18-0 against rival apprentices. That's almost unheard of. Aw, man. I'm not sure if I'm ready for that guy yet. Isn't there another apprentice we could try to battle first? Build up my confidence a bit? I just got this wand, and I haven't even had a chance to try it out yet. I looked down at the wand, made of gnarled, polished old wood, which I had clutched in my hand. Roses were wrapped around it, giving it a slightly feminine touch. By the way, can we get the roses off this thing somehow? I feel like I'm on Team Rocket over here. That's not very progressive. I'm disappointed in you, kid. I considered this for a few seconds, then realized Xavier was completely misunderstanding me, yet again. No, not like that. Like Pokemon. His bushy eyebrows raised even higher. If you want to have a chat about the birds and the bees, I'm afraid that's more your parents' responsibility. I had to have the talk with Grupe once. I'm still not over it. Never mind. Can we please just drop this? I'll just keep the damn roses, if it means we never, ever have to talk about this again. As you wish. Now, what were you saying about training? Can you show me some more spells I can use? Spells are a dime a dozen, boy. You can wander the multiverse on your own time and decide which worlds you want to channel. Oh. Well then, what are you going to show me then? I thought that channeling other worlds was the only skill we had to use. He looked offended by that. Really? You can't think of anything else that's gotten you out of a jam? And similarly, a technique Grupe has used to outsmart you again and again? I still couldn't figure out what he was talking about. The ability to travel between worlds is an incredible power in and of itself, he began, like a lecturer speaking to an audience of students. It can be used to your advantage in many ways, both offensively and defensively. The portals can also be used to scout your enemy's position, and to take advantage of them when their back is turned. Huh. I guess I hadn't really thought about it that much. But you're right. You saved my life with Derek by teleporting us behind him using a portal. And Grupe stole the wand I won from Clint by stealing it from me at the last second, appearing out of nowhere by using a portal. She was probably watching me too, using some people from another dimension. Exactly. Now we have 2 lessons to cover today. Both of them make full use of the portals, and both of them will be techniques that catch the Chaos Kid completely by surprise. I'm going to show you the power of combos and counters. Even Grupe doesn't know about this. For maybe the first time since my training began, I felt like I was learning something useful. I nodded my head and told Xavier to continue. Maybe he wasn't such a terrible teacher after all. Again! Xavier shouted, rapping the bottom of his staff against the stone floor of the floating pedestal of rock he was standing on. We were hovering around the Abyss dimension, using the floating chunks of rock as traveling platforms. It was pretty fun, not gonna lie. But the training was getting to be exhausting. Really? I asked, panting and out of breath. I'm thankful for all the new techniques, Xavier, but can we call it a day after this? I know you don't technically need to eat food anymore, but I'm starving. He looked annoyed, but conceded. Okay, last round. Let's see if you can finally best me, boy. I nodded, smiling deviously at him. I was finally getting the hang of this. It was my turn to win a round. All right, go! Xavier shot a laser beam of energy at me, which would have taken my head clean off. But I created a portal and used that to deflect the attack into an unoccupied world. Then I opened another portal behind Xavier, allowing the bolt of energy out and back into our world, restoring the balance. An added benefit was it hit Xavier in the arm, singeing his robes black. Ow! Blast it! You got me with that one. I couldn't help but smile. I countered his spell successfully. Now it was time for a combination attack. Leaping through the air, I used a portal to teleport behind him, then used a lightning bolt the moment I came through the other side, following that up with vines, a blast of sand, and some superfluous rose petals. A new spell which I wasn't aware I could do. Xavier was nowhere to be seen amidst the chaos of all this, and I realized why a second later. He teleported from a portal above me, landing directly behind me. I spun around, aiming my finger guns at him, ready to fire, when he yelled loudly in his authoritative voice, "Stop!" His gaze was staring far off into the distance. Oh, come on, Xavier. You can't just quit right when I'm about to beat you finally. Ah, not even close. Seriously, though, what is that? Something was floating through the air toward us, and I struggled to make out what it was. It looked familiar. What the? Is that cat food? The triangular piece of kibble was slowly coming toward us, and I noticed that a fat tabby cat was zooming through the air in pursuit, like Homer Simpson aboard the space shuttle, munching on potato chips. His rotund belly swung pendulously in a circle as he spun around, doing 360s. His face looked surprisingly happy, considering our surroundings. Xavier plucked the piece of cat food out of the air just as the kitty was opening its jaws to snatch it up. Its maw closed and it looked at us with an annoyed glare, before bouncing softly into my belly. I picked up the cat and held it in my arms, stroking its soft, furry forehead. It began to purr, looking like maybe it hadn't been that hungry after all. My mentor tossed the piece of kibble into his mouth, chewing it loudly with a quizzical look on his face. Interesting, he said, munching on it and savoring the flavor, as the cat in my arms watched him with a jealous look. Tuna flavor. First of all, gross. Second, what's on your mind, Xavier? I'm not sure yet, but I have a sneaking suspicion about how this dimension's wildlife is staying afloat. Specifically, the kitties. I waited for him to say more, but he didn't. Instead, he looked at me sharply and rapped his staff against the floor twice. Now, let's keep working to get you ready for the Chaos Kid. No rest for the weary. You're gonna need to learn a few more spells if you're gonna beat him. Hey, what about dinner? I'm hungry. Grab some kibble. There looks to be more of it floating around. It's time for you to earn that wand, young man. Well, how about that? I thought to myself. I've graduated from boy to young man. I was moving up in the world. But things were about to get a hell of a lot more chaotic after that. I found my nemesis, Bruke, in her bedroom. After a couple polite knocks on the door, she cleared her throat and spoke softly, her voice a poisonous lullaby. "Come in, foolish boy." My wand was gripped tightly in my fist as I entered, my knees wobbly, feeling like my legs were made of jello. I pushed the door open and listened to the hinges creak as I went in. A black cat immediately greeted me, pressing its body warmly against my leg. It looked up at me with toxic waste green eyes, and let out a soft meow of welcome. Another dozen felines were scattered throughout the room, perched on various surfaces and napping contentedly. A few looked up, but most remained slumbering. Bruke's bedroom was dark, aside from a circle of candles which had been lit and placed on the floor around a pentagram. My ex-girlfriend was hovering about 6 feet in the air with her arms out at her sides, palms up. Her eyes rolled back so that only the whites were showing. I took another step inside the room, and the door slammed shut behind me with a loud bang. Spinning around, I tried the doorknob, but it was locked and unmoving. "Why would you risk coming here? You know I'm just biding my time. Waiting to kill you?" she said softly. I took a deep breath, turning to look at her. It was difficult, since she was really creepy at that moment. Hovering, her hair blowing as if in a strong wind. But I managed to keep looking at her, trying to show her that I wasn't afraid. "I don't like this. Chrissy, wake up," played in my head over and over as I stared at her, trying to make words come out of my mouth. Finally, I succeeded. "Why don't you just kill me already? I'm right here. Let's get it over with." She didn't answer, but that was fine, since I didn't really want her to kill me. It was a bluff. "I don't think you're really as evil as you let on, Bruke. As much as you like to pretend you are." Her features softened, and her eyes rolled down in the most unsettling way, revealing her violet stare. "Oh, but I am. I'm even more evil than you think." "Nope, I don't believe it. You're the one who's been feeding the cats in the Abyss dimension, aren't you?" "Huh? No! What?" Her concentration seemed to falter for a second. She dropped to the floor, landing awkwardly on the flaming candles. For the second time, I had managed to register genuine surprise from her, and I took that as a small victory. "Ow! Ow! Shit! Oh, that wax is hot!" I ran over to her, helping her onto her bed as she wiped the liquid wax off of her clothes, and cried out in pain. For some reason, I couldn't help but to run to her when she was hurting, and I realized that meant I still had feelings for her. We sat down together on the lumpy mattress. The smell of her overwhelmed me again, like it always did. That aroma of berries and fall flowers turning brown. A not unpleasant autumn bouquet of decay. I'd forgotten all about the wand, now clutched too tightly in my grip, the rose thorns digging bloody holes into my palm that I wouldn't notice until much later on. "Hey, let me ask you one thing, and then I'll drop it, okay? How can you want to destroy everything? The sun, the stars, your mom and dad, the whole frickin' universe. And yet, you go out of your way to save those cats in that dark, ruined world. A world that you and that dark sorcerer created, I might add. Look, I don't know where I'm going with this, but it won't work. You know that, right? Your master wants to obliterate everything and start from the beginning. That means all those kitties are eventually going to have to go too. Same with these ones in your room. Do you really want that? Do you really want everyone and everything to just die?" Her violet eyes looked into mine, and she actually appeared to be considering my words for the first time. "Look, I get you don't like your dad. Sometimes I don't even like your dad. Xavier is... Well, I don't really think there's a word for it, but you know what I mean. Still, don't let him spoil your outlook on an entire multiverse just because his philosophies don't mesh with yours. There are good things in the multiverse that are worth saving. Things we all love and we would miss if they were gone. You know, cats and dogs, waterfalls and frickin' theme parks, green grass and sandy beaches. Wouldn't you miss any of it? She looked me in the eyes, batting her lashes innocently. I felt the bedding beneath me shift, as if alive, and I fell backwards into it suddenly. I writhed and kicked, trying to pull myself out, but couldn't. You still don't get it. I keep trying to explain it to you, but you're just slow, I guess. Like my dad. She stood up and watched as her blankets wrapped me up like snakes, winding themselves around me until I could barely breathe. Once I was completely enveloped by her blankets, she looked me in the eye and laughed. I am not the fun, friendly witch girl who you win over one day and bring to the good side. I am darkness incarnate. I'm pure fucking evil. I am the winter that will never end. I drain people's blood and drink it in skull goblets. I take people's skin and turn them into suitcases. I'm the motherfucking devil. Don't you get it, stupid? You can't change me. Who are you trying to convince? Me or you? These last words really seemed to anger her, since she summoned a portal a second later and cast me into it. I fell down into an ocean of icy water, still wrapped tightly in the blanket and unable to use my wand. Unable to try and swim to the surface or do anything to help myself. I was caught in a net of fabric like a fish being brought up to a boat. Only I was sinking deeper and deeper by the second, falling down and away from the light above, and into a darkness so black and deep that nothing could escape from it. As I plummeted down into the freezing water, my breath became tight, my lungs rejecting the sudden drop in temperature. It was shocking my system, causing my tissues to hitch and spasm and ache. Something was coming toward me from the darkness, and I saw a face full of teeth. 2 red eyes, glowing and growing as they got closer. I let out an involuntary scream of terror, and felt water fill my lungs with pain. That fear quickly turned into panic, as the eyes drew close, and I saw they belonged to the biggest shark I'd ever seen. Only this shark had night vision, and it was convinced I was its breakfast. It snapped its massive jaws at me and was suddenly on top of me. All that I saw was a brief flash of bright white, and then total darkness as it swallowed me whole, not even bothering to chew. I was a piece of plankton to this enormous whale of a shark, and it gulped me down with a healthy burp afterwards. Its belch was like an earthquake that rattled my bones and made my teeth hurt. I fell down into its gullet, tumbling breathlessly into its belly, and winding up amongst a smorgasbord of sea snakes, sharp-toothed eels, and strange aquatic spiders that seemed to live like parasites inside the massive creature, spinning green, mossy-looking webs which hung from everywhere and made it difficult to move. It was hot and humid and difficult to breathe, but at least there was air, even if it was foul-smelling and rancid. Immediately, the creatures all turned their heads to look at me, the odd-looking stranger who had joined them in their bizarre habitat. Strong acid was bubbling and burning away their skin, exposing bones beneath the muscle tissue. But that didn't stop them from feeling famished, since they attacked me a second later. I managed to unravel myself from the wet blanket that had entrapped me at least, and that allowed me to maneuver a little bit. An odd phosphorescent glow illuminated the huge stomach cavity, which allowed me to dodge out of the way just in time, as something that looked like a swordfish stabbed its long, toothy snout in my direction, bobbing up from beneath the water at my feet. I kicked at it and moved backwards, only to find myself in the boneless, squirming embrace of a squid. Its tentacles wrapped around me and began to squeeze. Strange, hook-like claws dug into me and burned me as if it was injecting me with acid. But soon, the crushing feeling of it wrapping me up outweighed any other pain. I felt like a Capri Sun at the end of its life cycle, as the creature crushed my ribcage and the air gurgled from my lungs. Home, I thought to myself, picturing a portal. Nothing happened. Earth, Xavier, blue sky, grass. Still nothing. My parents, home, my cat, Mustafa. I tried to think of anything I could that represented that place and reminded me of it, but nothing worked. And with each passing second, my vision grew darker, and my lungs screamed out louder for air, and I felt myself slowly losing consciousness. Although I knew that if I did black out, it would be the last thing I ever did. I couldn't help it. I pictured Bruca. She reminded me of being home more than anything, although I wasn't sure why. A loud pop, like a bubble being burst, could be heard all around me. And then, I was somewhere else. But it wasn't Earth. This was somewhere else. Somewhere I'd never been. The sky was a swirling vortex of stars and planets, multiple suns and moons. A faint, hazy glow backlit the cosmos. Although I could breathe the air, it was cold and uncomfortable, and I felt as if this place were not meant for human life. Or any sort of life, for that matter. Bruca could be seen far off in the distance, walking down a path which led towards... Thunder crashed in the distance, and I finally caught a glimpse of the largest, darkest-looking castle I had ever seen. It looked like something designed for Sauron and remodeled for a vampire. A medieval octopus of a mansion that leapt up from a pillar of stone and seemed to hover impossibly in the air. A swaying rope bridge was the only access, and Bruca was now making her way across. I suddenly had a terrible, stupid, really dumb idea. What if I could sneak up on them and beat them both right there and then? I'd have 100 times as much power and would be able to handle the other two apprentices with no problem. They'd be a piece of cake. And with Xavier back on Earth, unable to distract me, maybe I'd actually stand a chance. I hesitated for a moment. It wasn't the safest plan. I realized that. But I decided I would at least try to get close enough to spy on them. Worst case scenario, I would get caught, and I would just teleport myself back to Earth using the splinter which Xavier had lodged in my finger. With that, I felt confident in my ability to get home if I needed to. Taking a shaky step forward, I began to follow Bruca into the purple darkness of this strange new world. Become a channel member today for early access, bonus videos, and special emojis only available to members. Check out the description below or click the join button for more info. If you'd like another way to help support the channel, please consider joining my Patreon page at patreon.com/JordanGroupeHorror. As a patron, you'll get access to bonus videos and content. You'll be credited at the end of every video going forward, and if you decide to stay for 3 months, I'll name a character after you which will be featured in a Hollow's End story. Links to join the Patreon are in the description. Thanks everyone for listening. Please like, subscribe, and comment to help the channel continue to grow. And see you again next time at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hope you have a great night.